In case you've been out of the loop, the Midnight Beta has been a complete show. From bugs that cause people to one-shot each other in 0.1 seconds, or a complete change to DR icons, which ironically is not a bug. It's easy to say that things have been messy, but despite this, if you're an old-school PvPer or someone coming back after a long break, we genuinely think that Midnight is definitely worth playing, especially if Blizzard can work out a few kinks, and in this video, we will explain why. This will be an unfiltered look at the next expansion, covering both the good and the bad so that you know what to expect, and so Blizzard knows what to change if they're watching. Now, in case you have been mentally AFK for the past few months, there are 3 very important things you need to know about Midnight. Number 1, the vast majority of combat PvP add-ons will not work in the next expansion, which is something you probably noticed by now by playing on the pre-patch. Blizzard has implemented a new secret system for their API, which prevents displaying more information than the base UI itself. Some add-ons will still work, and even though they're not supposed to give any unique advantage over the base UI, they're still going to be beneficial, but more on that later. The second thing you need to know is that many abilities have been pruned, but not in the typical WoD style that you might be used to. Sure, some spells are completely gone, like interrupts for most healers, and even some rotational abilities, but in some cases, spells have been merged together, especially for healers. Finally, CC is drastically different in Midnight, with the third diminishing return being gone and the DR window being shortened slightly. So instead of being polymorphed 3 times in a row, you can only get polyed twice before being completely immune. On top of this, many specs have lost a lot of micro CC. Take Demon Hunter for example, who lost Fell Eruption entirely, while mages have lost their iconic Blast Wave knock. But what does this all mean for actual gameplay? The role that is changing the most is arguably healer. In case you weren't aware, the reason why DPS generally have longer queue times is simple: nobody wants to heal. And who can blame them? I mean, if you've ever healed a single arena in the past 2 expansions, you know how absolutely grueling it is to play the game, especially last season with Marks Hunters one-shotting your entire team in the blink of an eye. You absolutely needed to be 100% dialed in to play a healer in the past few expansions. Now, while there is still more class tuning we've yet to experience on the beta, one immediate difference you'll notice is that the game is definitely slower. Health bars aren't ping-ponging up and down all game like they've been doing since Shadowlands, and instead, the game feels paced more like Cataclysm of all things, and not Cata Classic, but OG Cata. So far, it's been quite rare to see someone's HP drop 70% in the blink of an eye, and instead, damage and healing feels more like a gradual push and pull. On top of this, the change to CC is definitely noticeable too. Now, if you were hoping that crowd control is completely abolished in Midnight, you will be disappointed. There will be moments where you can get chain CC'd. Iconic combos like Intim into Trap or Fear into Poly still exist, but the total time you spend in crowd control will be going down, especially with many micro CCs gone. Instead of feeling execution tested like you do in the War Within, Midnight PvP is definitely more chill, while still being challenging enough to enjoy. As for the removal of most add-ons, this is still an area of concern for some players, especially with the inability to track interrupts. With Blizzard's new secret rules, you cannot track any cooldowns from enemy players, and yes, this includes kicks too. For most classes, this can feel a bit awkward, since you either waste time juking when no kicks are ready, or you get kicked like a noob. The good news is that Blizzard can apparently change their secret rules on a spell-by-spell basis, meaning sometime in the future it might be possible for add-ons to track interrupts once again. But we want to hear from you. Do you think players should be allowed to track interrupts in Midnight? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to get ahead of the competition once the next expansion rolls around, or if you're looking to dip your toes into Classic, we've got you covered. Not only will we be rolling out brand new class guides for Midnight, but we even have a top secret program which could completely change PvP as we know it. Let's just say Skill Cap members will be eating good, especially with a brand new update to our UI. Speaking of which, for advanced players, you might feel a bit of friction with add-ons like Omni CD and Omni Auras being completely gone. It's significantly harder to tell when your teammates are actually safe, since you don't know when they have their defensives ready. Right now, with the pace of the game being slower, this isn't that big of a deal, but if the game ever speeds up, we could definitely anticipate some frustration. Another concern we have for some classes is downtime. What we mean by this is, since Blizzard has pruned many spells, some specs have noticeable gaps in their rotation. A perfect example is Holy Priest, who lost both Renew and Shadow Word Pain. The removal of Pain means you don't have a secondary spell school, which means if you get interrupted, there's nothing you can do but move your character. And with Renew being gone as an active ability, there's not much you can press while moving anyway, if Palm is on CD and there's nothing to dispel. Not every spec is like this, but you can begin to see some of the potential consequences of ability pruning, especially for healers who might not need to constantly spam their buttons anymore. Now, in case you're wondering what specs might be meta in Season 1, it's way too early to predict, but with the game being slower, we have noticed a bit of a trend. Raw attrition-based specs seem to be doing fairly well. Think of your Unholy DKs, BM Hunters, and Demo Warlocks, specs that aren't designed to one-shot but basically carry momentum all game. Right now in Deep Dampening, their damage is practically unhealable. So what do we think of gameplay overall? Ignoring some of the janky issues on the beta so far, we're actually optimistic. If anything, the best part of Midnight is that it finally feels like a new expansion, at least in terms of gameplay. We don't know about you guys, but the past two expansions sort of blurred together. The War Within felt like it was just Dragonflight with a new paint job, and not a good paint job either. Instead, a sort of sloppy landlord special. With the good out of the way, we need to talk about the bad. If you are a battle-hardened PvPer, you already know that Blizzard treats us like second-class citizens. With every patch, PvEers get to enjoy an entirely new raid with badass gear and mounts. We're lucky to get a new map that doesn't suck and anything more than a small flag to display on our backs, neither of which ever feels like content. With that said, we are getting a new epic BG in Midnight. Unfortunately, so far it's been a disaster, and unless you have $500 to spare for some more RAM, chances are your experience will look like a PowerPoint presentation. Blizzard's already had problems with performance in 20-man raids, so jamming 80 players into a crazy textured zone with a gazillion NPCs seems like a massive oversight. Not to put on a tinfoil hat here, but this new content was probably made to look impressive in a board meeting rather than being optimized for actual players. And if we had to guess, 50% of you probably won't be touching the new epic BG more than a handful of times anyway. Now, there is of course a new training mode designed to bridge the gap for new players wanting to get into PvP, which again is technically new content, but for most of you watching, we'd guess that you are already experienced in PvP anyway. The new PvP training grounds are just a slightly more complicated version of the current Comp Stomp Brawl, with bots designed to guide players through very basic mechanics on a few different BG maps. The idea is there, but the execution isn't great, especially with bots currently one-shotting players on the pre-patch. In theory, training mode could help some players learn the spells of other classes and basic mechanics, like how and when to use your trinket, but for many PvPers, the mode won't serve any purpose. It's crazy to think that despite being a billion-dollar company, Blizzard has yet to cook up anything better than the training mode from Madden 2004. There were even chess bots in the 1990s that were able to beat Grandmasters, so why can't Blizzard make real bots 30 years later? But now we need to address what might be the most controversial change in Midnight so far: Diminishing returns. Earlier, we said the DR system is changing, which is totally fine. We also mentioned that many micro CCs have been removed from the game, also a win. However, what Blizzard has decided to do in their UI makeover is change the way DRs are displayed on arena frames. If you've been using Gladius or S Arena all these years, by now you are used to DRs being displayed as spell icons. You polymorph a healer and bam, a polymorph icon appears. Or maybe someone else on your team lands a stun. Chances are you're used to seeing the icon of their ability. But instead of using actual spell icons for DRs in Midnight, what Blizzard has done is represent each DR category with brand new icons, and honestly, they're a bit random. The stun DR is represented by a concussive shot icon, of all things. Disorients like Fear, Cyclone, and Blind, well, they are one of the spell thread icons from TBC. As for incapacitates like Polymorph and Freezing Trap, they are good old Detect Magic from Vanilla. No, we're not joking. If you log on to the Midnight Beta or the current pre-patch right now and Q Arena, these are the DR icons you will be seeing, and that's just half of the DR categories. It's clear what Blizzard's trying to do. They want to normalize what Diminishing Returns looks like, so that new players don't have to memorize a bunch of spells. That's totally fine. However, this single change will take some getting used to for any experienced player. There is a workaround though, and you technically can replace the DR icons with anything you want. There are other minor details that could be a positive or negative depending on how you spin it. For instance, the gearing system seems to be almost identical to what we currently have. You're still going through the season trying to speedrun your way to your tier set, while gradually crafting pieces with brand new embellishments along the way. At this point, PvP gearing is a bit of an enigma. If you're used to it, then it's super easy, but if this is your first season playing after an extended break, it could seem quite confusing. Now, while we do have a lot to criticize going into Midnight, we would like to emphasize that overall, the expansion is looking super promising. Without a doubt, the game will feel different, but in a good way. Having a new experience is what we ultimately want the most out of a new expansion. And to address the elephant in the room, we don't think PvP is necessarily going to feel easier or harder, even if the classes have simpler rotations and if add-ons are getting removed. There's still going to be some power creep in the game for many classes, and if anything, the removal of cooldown tracking add-ons simply shifts the possibilities of skill expression. Even slower and arguably simpler versions of WoW PvP like TBC have small micro interactions that can be mastered for a competitive advantage. This is why we think any old school PvPer might actually prefer Midnight to other recent expansions. With a slower pace, less add-on power, and only a few hints of power creep, the game will offer a lot more creativity than simply bashing your PvE DPS rotation reacting to a million different air horns. It's always been our goal at SkillCaps to make WoW PvP easier to understand for any player. And over the years, we've been lucky enough to see 500,000 players learn something valuable in WoW Arena and reach their rating goals. We will be ready for Midnight with a complete overhaul to our entire service. And while you're awaiting, be sure to check out our classic sites to get instant access to our massive collection of guides covered under a single subscription and backed up by a rating gain guarantee. For now, we want to thank you all for watching. See you soon.